Alright, everyone. So this is the demo video for the Tech Entrance application from Group 2. So Tech Entrance is an application that helps college students and new grad to find internships and job related to tech. That's why we call it Tech Entrance. So to go to this application, you just go to the URL of that and you will be redirected to the login page first if you are not logged in yet. So since we don't have an account yet, let's go ahead and sign up. But in the sign up, if you already have an account, you can always go back to the login page. Right? And let's say a minute. So these fields are all required. So if you hit next without entering anything, it will yell at you. So same thing with this. And then phone number, there has to be a right format. So if it's not number or something not enough, it has to be a 10-digit phone number. So let me enter the right format. This is not a real phone number. So for email, you have to be the same thing. You have the at. So I'm going to say js@gmail.com and then for the password. Okay, next. Okay, so these are all optionals, but I'm gonna fill in my GPA, my city, and my state. Okay, and next. So here are the skills that we're gonna find the jobs based on. So I'm gonna do AWS is a certification, and add field. I'm gonna add Java here, and then I'm gonna save it. Okay, so this is basically we're done with the sign up process and it's finding the jobs for you. So here are the jobs that we can find for you. Let's go. Let's first go to the profile page first. So here is the profile page. You can see that your name, your phone number, GPA, stuff like that. And if you want to edit your name or anything on this page, you can just hit edit. And then let's say you want to change it to John Adams, and say return. You can see that your name is now John Adams. And to add a skill, you just need to add it here instead of that edit profile button. Let's say I want to add C++ to my profile. Okay, save. And the reason why it's loading a bit longer because it's finding the job for you. So here are the jobs that we found for you. Um, let's look at one of them. Let's look at this one first. Here is the mobile engineering intern. So it is related to tech, and we have the company name here, the location, and now is the description of the job. So you can see that there should be something that we know, Java, for example. The way that the reason why these looks kind of funky, so it has description here and the description here again is because this is the only free API that we can find to find the jobs for us. And it returned an actual HTML, so we had to like do some work to like filtering all the tags out, and then we find the actual HTML and show it on our page like we like. So down here we're gonna have an apply button. When you click it, it will take you a new tab that is the posting of the job, that where you can apply for the job. It's basically the same thing, mobile engineering intern at Allstate here. So let's get back to here. Let's find a different company. Let's say CVS. You see this one has C++. Also have Java here. And let's say there's one more. Let's find an AWS one. Let's see if this one has an AWS. Oh, this one has an AWS here. See, we can find the jobs that has the skills that you have. So next thing I want to demo is if you go to a job and you really like this job, you want to save it so you can apply it later. You can hit the save button, and now you go back here. It should be an unsaved now. So if you use save job, you can see that here is the job that you saved. You can click it. You want to apply for it, and you can unsave it. Let's see. I'll stay here. You can save it and save job. You should see it here. But if you unsave it, save job, and it should disappear here. All right. So for the about page, it's just about us as the group that created this application, and a little bit about the application here. Um, okay. So another thing I want to demo is that since we are logged in, we already saved your session. So if you close the tab and go back to a local host, you hit enter, it should not tell you to log in again, and you should go to a homepage directly with all the right name right here, and then but when you log out, it will log you out, and then if you go to localhost again, it shouldn't go back to that homepage. One more thing I want to demo is the login page. We didn't touch this because after you sign up, we will automatically log you in. So I would say something that random, that is not a right account. Login, the email or password is not correct. And this should be the same with the sign up page. You have to enter like an actual email. So here we can do js@gmail.com and then password. Okay, and then login. It's loading. Let's find the newest jobs for you. We fetch the API again, so you get the jobs here. And then one more thing I want to demo is sign up. So if you sign up with the same people, the same email, it will yell at you. So first name, let's say Adam. Last name is Smith. Phone number, let's say, an email, js@gmail.com, which is John Adams' email, John Smith's email, and password. It will yell at you an account with this email already exists. One email can only have one account. All right, or you have an account, and then you just sign in. All right, so that's the features that we have for you in this application.
We will now discuss the technologies we used in the creation of TechEntrance. I'll start with the front end and the database technologies, move to the back end, and then finish up with testing and version control software. To create the front end, we used a combination of 4 different technologies: HTML with CSS, Bootstrap, MySQL for the database, and JavaScript. There is a lot of overlap between the technologies we used for this project. We favored ease of learning and simplicity over more complicated technologies that would take longer to learn despite potentially having more functionality. In this vein, we used HTML as the underlying code for all web pages. It is the basis for most web pages today, and that helped us with maintainability. It has a fully fleshed out documentation which contributed to the ease of us learning it. By using these well-known components, we hope to increase the ease of use on the end user. HTML allows the embedding of JavaScript to increase the functionality of our pages, and CSS allowed us to standardize page layouts to improve content accessibility. Following along from this logic, we used the Bootstrap framework. It's one of the most popular CSS frameworks out there, and in fact it is in the top 20 most downloaded projects on GitHub. Bootstrap contains library templates for components that you'd like to put on your web page, such as forms and buttons. It is highly convenient as it is open source software, and as you use it, the basic component is the container, which allows elements on the page to be placed into it and furthers the standardization of your website in general. JavaScript is a high-level programming language that was created in the 90s and allows us to modify the functionalities on our web pages. It is a scripting language that is interpreted at compile time, which simplifies the load on the server that we use. It allows for dynamic web pages that are changed after they are loaded in the browser. It's object-oriented, which is convenient for us, as most of us know Java as our object-oriented language. It's very API-friendly, which is also good, as it allows us to use an API to facilitate our job searches. In our case, we also use JavaScript to implement things such as drop-down menus and fillable forms. SQL, the relational database management system, is used to organize data. In our case, we chose MySQL over Base SQL as it is open source, which increases our maintainability and modularity. Individual tables in SQL can then be sorted and compared in order to extract relevant data. In our case, these databases were used for maintaining lists of users and their corresponding passwords in order to verify them on login and increase our website security, as well as containing the list of jobs that we pulled from our API. Now we'll move on to our backend technologies, Java, Spring Boot, and the Muse API. Java is a high-level object-oriented language that we are all familiar with as CS students here at George Mason. It follows a write once, run anywhere philosophy by compiling programs into a proprietary bytecode that runs on any JVM. This increases portability as Java can run on any computer that has downloaded the JVM. It has built-in garbage collection and memory management so that we do not have to worry about any memory leakage as we are writing the code. It is used extensively in modern web page design, which helps with all the non-functional requirements we've discussed before, as well as with troubleshooting, as the documentation is very comprehensive. The Spring Boot framework is an open source inversion of control style container for Java. This means that instead of having our custom code called generic library functions in Java, there are many generic Spring Boot functions that call the custom Java code we've written ourselves. This allows every product to have high modularity and extensibility. By incorporating the internal Apache server, it allows applications to simply run without relying on external server. It also provides a robust testing module. In our case, we used Spring Boot mostly for testing, as well as processing requests from the front end using HTTP. As the main functionality provided by our website is to find job postings for prospective students, we needed to find an API that could find the jobs that we were looking for. The API that we found is called Muse, which is open source and is used exactly what we need it for to provide job and company listings. It returns a JSON object containing all the relevant data for the job that we're looking for, employer, salary, when the job is open, etc., and that is easily parsed by our back-end logic. It has a high rate limit of 500 requests per hour, which is more than enough for the purposes that we need. In fact, some of the APIs we searched through before only had rates of 100 requests per hour or even 10. The Muse API also returns common error messages for easy troubleshooting. Finally, for our testing and version control softwares, we used Mockito and GitHub. Mockito is a testing framework for Java. It allows for the creation of mocks and their use in testing. Mocks are objects created specifically at test time that are fully or partially initialized objects and are used in order to simulate behaviors of the program or application that are not directly being tested. For example, we can mock an object that is required as input for another function. Mockito also has included functionality for automated unit tests. For our version control system, we used GitHub. GitHub is an internet-hosted version of the popular version control system Get. It is simple to use and easy to pick up quickly for new users. It allows many developers to access a single project without having to be on the same device or transfer files between them multiple times. GitHub can track changes between subsequent re-uploads, also known as pushes or commits, of the same file, in order for developers to quickly check what has been changed since the last time they have worked on the file, as well as to revert to a previous version if necessary. GitHub has many locations for notes and documentation to be written down, which simplifies the documentation process for the entire project. Finally, GitHub allows product code to be forked at any location, which allows for the product to go in a new direction if necessary, without losing access to the previous project.
So for this part, I kind of want to go over the issues when we develop tech entrance, like our for our project, because even though it mostly went smoothly, we did have some issues, obviously going around and all that stuff. So I kind of want to discuss uh, in detail what happened exactly. So okay, so our front end, um, we actually for our front end we actually had the least amount of problems, really enough. So the only thing, and these happened mostly earlier on during our project. So it was more or less just the main thing was the look of our homepage. We didn't really know what we wanted to look like. We wanted to make it a bit more complex or a bit more simple. We had some discussions about that. In the end, we decided to go for a more simplistic look and all that stuff. And another thing that we kind of struggled a bit was with the look of the jobs in the homepage, where the blocks weren't they didn't have exactly like an even size and all that stuff. But eventually, we kind of realized that it was probably okay for the most part, so we decided to keep it like that. And obviously, like, we did have some trouble having like front end and back end communicating well enough, like with API calls and stuff, just to make sure that everything was being presented correctly and everything was being displayed, all that stuff. And so we did have a good amount of trouble with with the backend slash database part. So the first thing was authentication, just making sure that all login information was secure, all that stuff, like make sure no one could um accidentally like go into someone else's account, making sure we had cookies and all that stuff. And we had to make sure we all had a database to have a secure database to make sure that all that information was secure and private, and only really only really visible to the user and stuff. Uh, Second thing was string parsing. So this is more or less just trying to find the jobs themselves. So when the user puts in their skills, we want to make sure that we can find jobs that consist. We need to find job listings where they need to make sure they have those exact skills. And a big problem was trying to make sure that we could use like string matching to make sure that those jobs that we got for the user could actually correlate with their skills. It did take a while. We had to try some string matching solutions and all that stuff. um, Took a bit, but we did eventually iron out those kinks, and we did manage to manage to get our backend code to make to manage to get our backend code to make sure that all the job listings were appropriate for the skill sets for the individual user. And obviously, we did have some initial trouble just making sure the database could work, to make sure we got all the jobs so it can actually properly store the jobs, all the user skills, and basically any user data such as like their GPA, their name, and all that stuff. And toward the end, we did have when we were testing, we did have some problems where we did have trouble using mock variables at first, because our test cases wouldn't really work properly um, with with mock variables, because we did use something called Mockito alongside JUnit to test our code. And initially try to utilize those using mock variables in order to actually test our classes and all that stuff. It did give us some headache at first, but we did manage to figure that all out. And especially what gave us a harder time too was static methods, because there wasn't really an easy way to do it. We did figure out some workarounds, but they were kind of pretty hard for us to test in general. But obviously, we did figure those out, and we did manage to get like uh, enough test coverage for our software that we figured out that everything worked correctly. So yeah.
So now I'm gonna explain how we did our testing for this project. So basically, the best or the only framework we used was JUnit. Uh, and we also used Mockito, which helped us to mock some functions. Uh, so basically, for each code here, or for each class, uh, we added our import statements. We added all our necessary other import statements, and we created mock variables. So the reason we created these mock variables were, for example, here. So since our function is calling another function, we had to mock this line here to uh, get our desired output. So, for example, this function, home cookie is not null. So we mocked our security method. So security.validate session, we mocked that. And basically, since we don't want cookie to be null, we returned a new cookie with the given name and a session ID. So once you get a new cookie, basically it's gonna bypass this if statement because the cookie is not null. Then another thing that we had to mock was this user service. So user service get user by session ID. We also had to mock that, and basically if the user was found, we just added it to our string by its ID. So this is how we used Mockito. Also, as you can see, or you can go over each class, we wrote a lot of unit tests for each function. Each function or control function has about 5 to 6 test cases, so we added that. And so this is the code coverage, which I'm gonna show again, but off the top you can see that some lines weren't properly covered. This was because of for example, line 51. We weren't able to do that because of static classes. So Mockito doesn't have a good way to test static methods. So that was the problem that we were facing for testing. So I'll run all the tests now. So if you go over our GitHub link and see files, so basically in source we have two folders, main and test. In test we have the tests for controller, security, and service, which is basically here: controller, security, and service. We didn't test repo because it's an interface, so we really didn't have to test interfaces. And model was just basic classes which had a constructor and some getter setter methods, so there was also no reason to test these classes. Another thing that we couldn't test was this main get class, which gets a list of jobs from the Muse API. Again, like I said, since these are static methods, we had a hard time to test these. But basically, what we were planning to do is have about 2 to 3 test cases for these. So basically, once you call an API, you get a response code if the HTTP request was successful or not. If it's 200, which means it's a success. So one test case would be here, or for this function, to see if our HTTP request was a success or not. A second test case would be when we return our jobs. So basically, we just want to see if our API works or not, and all of these lines, if they work or not. And so basically for these or for this class, I wanted to add 2 test cases, but like I said, because of this being static, I couldn't add it. So that was a problem we were having with the static method. So to give a live code coverage of our test cases, I'll just run these test cases with coverage. So IntelliJ has a good uh, function of running test cases with coverage. So if I run this for all the classes, so this test case, or I'll just, yeah, so this test case failed because of a static method. So I removed some test cases which didn't work, but for now, just for an example, I just wanted to show here why our test cases are failing. So I'll create a new active suite here. So this while I'm doing this, can also, like, after working on this project, I realized, or we realized, that testing is a really important thing. So probably in the future, but or if we had another chance to do this, what we would do is we would create each function, or like uh, finish one phase and do testing there. So that's one thing we could do for testing. So this is the last one. Basically, we have a coverage here. So, oh, yeah. So login control, yeah. So I think I didn't add it, but basically here's how it looks. So for example, for job controller class, IntelliJ gives us a green line here, which means these lines have been covered. And basically for this class, we have a 100% method coverage, 100% line coverage. So that's how our testing looks. And for login controller test, probably didn't add it, or I forgot to add it, but yeah. So here, same thing again. Basically, in login controller, we almost got all the lines covered except when working with these two functions. So login and login view. Basically, again, like I said, since this was a static method, we are getting a weird error when running it with Mockito. So that's why we couldn't test this part here, because when you mock it and return null, that seems to work, but when you return an object or a string, it fails. So that's why we couldn't mock this. So these were all the unit tests. We also tried doing integration testing here, but we tried to do it, but we couldn't do it properly because, again, we were using Mockito to test it, but integration testing was not giving us the correct results. So we decided to do or give 100% focus on unit testing. So just a brief summary of this would be we used Mockito and the JUnit framework to test our methods. Yeah, and I guess some helpful tutorials that we used were these websites here. So basically how to write a basic JUnit test case and how to integrate Mockito. So these are some of the links which we used. I guess. Yeah. And another Mockito tutorial that we used was this. So this has all the things that you need to start with Mockito, basically.